I told Mark that I sit 60 hours a week, so I wanted to stand. We read a wonderful poem by the Nicaraguan poet Ernesto Cardenal, and we were given an assignment to try to remember exactly what things look like in our life as we're doing our job. So this is a prose piece from that exercise. Just another shift. Late wintry afternoon, shrouded by a temperamental gray sky, sleet pelts the sidewalks of Manhattan's Upper East Side. I'm snug behind the steering wheel of my yellow taxi, driving southerly down York Avenue, beginning my 12-hour shift, searching for my first fare. Pedestrians wrapped in thick coats scurry across intersections, anxious to arrive at their overpriced apartments. Nannies in plastic ponchos roll massive prams in front of the cab as I wait for red lights to blink back to green. Another urban day, ending with icy dusk descending. My 60-year-old body, tired and creaky from the previous night's work. I sip a hot cup of coffee, which perfumes the musty smell of the auto's interior. Depressed at the thought of the drudgery ahead, I switch to WQXR on the dashboard radio, and I am serenaded by a Bach violin sonata. Tiny pellets of hail pouncing on the hood accompany Johann Sebastian with natural counterpoint. It is rush hour, but no one is rushing to grab my cab. I drive past the Episcopal Church of the Epiphany, wishing an epiphany would manifest in my repetitive life. Same old back and forth each evening. I've become a burned-out automaton, yearning for the adventurous excitement of my youth, but understanding this is only the continuous folly of my mind. Luckily, before I get too down in the dumps with mental monologues, I spot a waving hand attached to a long arm between two parked vehicles. Hailing a taxi, I screech my brakes in front of a woman who resembles Fran Dresser, clad in a faded mink. Opening my right automatic window to illegally ask her destination, she inquires with a voice that sounds like fingernails on a chalkboard. "Will you please take me and my mother to Queens? My mother's in a wheelchair." My heart sinks. Queens at rush hour, a cabbie's nightmare, bumper-to-bumper traffic, and most likely a return without a fare, an empty back seat. I wince at this potential loss of income. However, being the so-called professional that I am, I grudgingly say yes. Putting the car in park, I pop open the battery-powered trunk to load the wheelchair. Finally, I emerge into February's blustery air, dressed in khakis and a checkered shirt. On the sidewalk, seated in a clunky wheelchair, swathed in a quilted blanket, an ancient-looking white woman sneers. Her face reeks of bitterness under gray hair, fizzled by drizzle. Glaring at me with contempt as I walk toward her, the middle-aged daughter stands on one side, smiling to assure this grim mother I'm there to assist. Her offspring clutches one of her frail arms as I lift the other. On the count of 3, we hoist this bag of bones onto her wobbling feet. She shrieks like a character out of a Greek tragedy. "You're hurting me!" Step by step, off the half-foot curb, we move Hecuba into the right rear door of the taxi. We spin her around rump first. She plops her butt onto the back seat, moaning with pain. I place her feet carefully onto the rubber-matted floor. My not-so-happy helper enters on the opposite side after waiting for the busy traffic to clear. With great struggle, I stuff the wheelchair in the Crown Victoria's tight trunk, barely able to shut the top. Seated back in my cushioned driver's seat, out of breath and wet from sleet, hail, slush, the younger woman trumpets through the plexiglass partition window. "Senna Boulevard and 48th Avenue. Off we go. Reluctantly, I'm ready to navigate these out-of-sorts passengers over the newly named Ed Koch Bridge. Like a tortoise, the worn Ford maneuvers slowly down the slippery street, weaving past buses and double-parked SUVs. With the meter activated, taxi TV blares from the rear of the cab with Al Roker jabbering a weather update. Frustration revisits me as I inwardly bitch about this unlucky trip. Horns honk all around me. Road rage by pissed-off commuters longing to get home to the suburbs. I breathe deeply and remember that I'm doing a good deed by helping these poor women out of the freezing wind. Darkness has arrived, and I see nothing but brake lights ahead through my foggy windshield, beaten by manic wipers. Inch by inch, with tires married to the asphalt, we cascade onto the upper ramp of the former Queensboro Bridge, my headlights glowing brightly through snowflakes surrounding us on this steel behemoth. Behind my head, a fight ensues, a family feud. Mother Sunshine cries out, "Who's paying for all these damn doctor bills?" With grit and underlying resentment, the nasal voice seated next to her exclaims, "Ma, I told you 1,000,000 times. Medicare, Medicare, Medicare!" We are finally welcomed by the glimmering billboards surrounding Queens Plaza as we sharply turn onto Jackson Avenue toward Hunters Point. Arriving at one of those ugly new condos in Long Island City, bordering the East River, I slip into a circular driveway. With numbed legs, I slowly exit and retrieve the wheelchair, supporting the invalid out of the taxi with tender care, hoping she won't break her weakened hips. Her patient child hands me lovely cash, including a nice tip for the ride. I help stone-faced Mama back into her steel stroller. I then whisper to her kin, "You're a very good daughter. Do you have any help?" She quips, "I got 2 good-for-nothing brothers that don't do shit." Heading back to the Enchanted Island. Heading back to the Enchanted Island, I give myself a pat on the back, reflecting about my act of charity. It was my Mother Teresa moment. I've become an ambulance of mercy. Quickly, without kidding myself, I returned to reality. Mother Teresa helped out of love. I did it for a buck and for fear of being reported to the TLC. Surprisingly, I find myself feeling compassionate for the two brothers rather than the devoted daughter. I ponder how taxi driving brings out the worst in me while scouting for my next fare. Thank you. Thank you. In the workshop, we read a wonderful poem by the fabulous South African poet Dennis Brutus entitled Sequence for South Africa. And there are several sections of the poem. And what I got from the poem was really about loss. And so this is what I came up with for myself in my own situation. Manhattan residences of certain classy women who have influenced this taxi driver's life. Number 1, 9 Van Dam Street. As a rookie cabbie, during times of needed whimsy, I often circled and circled this residential address, seriously daydreaming, even though the sun had long set. My eyes beheld a charming federal townhouse constructed of red brick, nestled in a row of townhouses juxtaposed with industrial residences and structures. A teeny-weeny block sandwiched between 6th Avenue and Varick. Some referred to this vicinity as Soho, but historically incorrect. It was really the south side of Greenwich Village. The slender home boasted a bright white front door with a golden slot for mail, an inviting entrance to greet invited visitors, which did not include me. My car's tempo andante as I snooped with devotion, gazing at this 3-story abode, aware one of the greatest operatic sopranos of all time vocalized behind those walls. Her talkative neighbor who hailed me once informed me there was a garden behind 9, where from a kitchen window she witnessed this musical icon digging into the downtown earth, planting seeds for the coming spring. I always idled my saffron sedan, staring out the dirty windshield when noticing lights gleaming through ivory shutters. I sensed the diva was in residence, imagining her ethereal voice singing arias from Verdi's La Forza del Destino. I would shout out loud, "Good evening, Leontine Price," as my car rumbled away into the stark darkness of midnight. 2, 32 East 64th Street, the Verona. For years, the queen bee of the arts lived and entertained in this swanky Italian Renaissance-style cooperative. Modeled after the Strozzi Palace in Firenze, this Madison Avenue copy lies smack dab in the silk stocking district. A green canopy flanked by ornate lamppost shields, wrought iron doors, opening to a lobby dominated by a marble staircase evoking a movie set from a Busby Berkeley extravaganza. Flying past in my yellow canary on many harried evenings, I lovingly envisioned Kitty Carlisle Hart descending down those rhapsodic stairs, dressed to the nines to class up our gritty city. How hollow my gut feels these last few years, sputtering by in my office on wheels, mindful the gracious lady who was emblematic of New York's artsy flair no longer resides there, but instead warbles, smoke gets in your eyes for the showbiz angels up in Broadway heaven. 1040 Fifth Avenue. You were my childhood, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, such a rarefied first lady, glamming up television news, an inspiration for a gay boy harboring fanciful aspirations, stuck in the hinterland of Louisiana. How I still remember images of you at the funeral, that long black mantilla covering your grief-stricken face. Even at my young age, I silently mourned as you orchestrated your grave loss through dignified ritual. Here in the Big Apple, my destiny reduced me to a hack's life, struggling in my own tragedy of unfulfilled dreams. For years, my cab whizzed by the elegant edifice of your apartment house, gracing the corner of Fifth Avenue and East 85th. Oodles of times I prayed your uniformed doorman might flag me down, and bingo, your celebrated self glitz up my back seat. And then, out of my adoring lips, admiration and praise would trippingly roll off my tongue. For your sake, you were spared. What a ritzy neighborhood you inhabited in your editorial days, but quite fitting for Jackie O. Just a block from the cream-colored Metropolitan Museum of Art, and across the street from Manhattan's Emerald Oasis, Central Park, where you jogged around the skylined reservoir appropriately renamed in your honor. 2 weeks before your death, as I was trapped in southbound traffic passing your regal home, I peered westward, saw you resting on a park bench shaded by leafy trees. Stoically beside you, your companion, Maurice Templesman, protected you from the ogling likes of me. Overblown sunglasses hid your forlorn eyes, but I knew it was definitely you. You appeared tranquil, at peace in the warm rays of afternoon sun. My brain's black and white camera captured this snapshot for my own eternity. I should have double parked to say hello, but unfortunately, I couldn't stop my vehicle in a busy bus lane. Sorry, I didn't risk a ticket now. These days, I buzz by your former dwelling place, recalling you with wistful affection. Sometimes I picture you as a diaphanous ghost waving an arm for a taxi. Of course, your apparition is always adorned in a smart Lily Pulitzer day dress. For me, an era of our town gone forever, except in my memories scrapbook. Thank you. Thank you. For my final selection, I'm going to read a poem about last autumn for all of us. Driving my taxi after Sandy's wrath, November 2nd, 2012. Before dawn's first naked streak, I spin wheels in the financial district, a corporate neighborhood, powerless, moonless, blocks and blocks of pitch blackness. Barely seeing my hands before me, my humming motor invades the silence as high beams of the intrepid cab guide me through this surrealistic maze, sadistically humbled by Mother Nature. South Street Seaport destroyed, flooded by a river's angry surge. Skyscrapers appear like charcoal etchings, lifeless in the hour when werewolves roam. Subways sleep, farting buses non-existent. A few brave stick figures stumble on invisible curbs, cautiously traversing crosswalks bereft of working traffic signals. This high-horse town brought down to its knees, the endless electricity of Lower Manhattan burned out from a flaming explosion, mangling Cod Ed's East Village substation. In somber reverie, I muse how quickly our lives suddenly shift, swift as waves of water sinking islands. A hipster on a bike with flashing beacons becomes my compass, heading me south on Broadway alongside Zuccotti Park, unoccupied except for a few defiant pigeons. I'm always aware devils can strike. I open my owl eyes wider for thieves who might rob me on not-so-busy Beaver Street. Car doors locked, I crawl at a snail's pace, desperately seeking souls, begging for a needed lift out of this science fiction horror created from a storm's violent fury. Who knew it would take a hurricane for this persnickety old cabbie to be thrilled for a fare to Brooklyn, where there is still remnants of civilization from flickering street lamps on Flatbush Avenue until arriving at the devastated carnival of Coney Island and not far beyond the annihilated Rockaway Peninsula. Thank you.